Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day, and welcome back to another Twisted Metal vehicle tier list, this time for Head On the PlayStation 2. The characters within each tier are ordered, but could easily be interchanged depending on personal playstyle or preferences. I'd also like to note that I'll be ranking the vehicles based on their unupgraded form, so the upgraded version of the special attacks will have no effect on the list. I won't be including Tower Tooth in this list because even though he is technically playable, he's only playable on the Tower Tooth challenge mode, which is limited to only one map. Lastly, I'd like to announce that I'm planning on creating a brand new series of videos where I ask all of you guys to give your opinions on various aspects of Twisted Metal. I'll then take all the results you guys submit and use that data in the video. The first of this series will be the community ranking the levels within Twisted Metal 2. So if this is something you'd be interested in participating in, there will be a link in the description that'll take you to the survey. It won't take you any more than a few minutes to fill out, and it'll be a fun way to share your thoughts and opinions in future videos. With all that out of the way, let's get started with the list. This time, the unfortunate soul that finds itself at the bottom of my list is none other than ATV. I'm sure this comes as a surprise to no one, considering ATV has an absolutely pitiful excuse for an armor stat, without a killer special weapon to make up for it. His special attack fires a few waves of bullets and a cone in front of the vehicle, and it does okay damage. This character is definitely the toughest to succeed with in the game in my opinion, and that's the main factor that leaves him as the sole representative of the D tier. Hey, at least he talks like Boomhauer, and he has that going for him. Taking a look at the lone vehicle in C tier, we find Grasshopper. I personally find this iteration of Grasshopper to be her strongest appearance, which really isn't saying much, plus she isn't really that good. Her special is the same as it is in Twisted Metal 2, where she jumps into the air to home in on an opponent, and then flies at them and rams them. It certainly functions better in this game, as it's more consistent and doesn't tend to cause as much damage to the player as often. It's still nothing spectacular, however, and still retains the issue of putting yourself that close to an opponent as a character with an armor stat on the smaller side. Regardless of these flaws, I still believe Grasshopper to be usable and actually pretty fun to play in this title. Starting off the highly populated B tier is Crimson Fury. I find the cars within the B tier to be pretty average overall, with clear strengths, but also at least a couple weaknesses that hold them back. Crimson Fury is another classic example of a glass cannon archetype, having low armor but good damage and high speed to make up for it. The special weapon targets enemies within a crosshair, and then upon firing, an extremely fast missile is launched at the targeted opponent with minor homing capabilities. This attack is decent, but is also one of the main reasons Crimson Fury doesn't rank higher than this. The attack just doesn't do as much damage as you would hope, considering the extremely low armor stat and all. However, Crimson Fury is definitely still a good vehicle. It just demands a more hit and run playstyle in order to succeed. Following Crimson Fury is none other than Twister, another vehicle that is incredibly fast and agile, but has next to no armor to work with. Twister's special weapon in this game functions virtually the same as it does in every other iteration of the character. Twister whips up a tornado surrounding her car and pulls in enemies while damaging them in the process. This attack is really strong if you can manage to get multiple enemies caught up in it. It's also significantly easier to use in previous games due to better controls and the fact that the camera pans out to give you a wider field of view while using the attack. Overall, Twister is a solid choice in this title, mainly being held back by the poor durability of the vehicle. Outlaw is up next on my list due to just being really average in this game. The special attack is the same as the PS1 iterations of the characters, where nearby enemies are zapped with electricity. This does respectable damage and is really easy to use, considering all you need is to be relatively close to the opponent for the attack to connect. This paired with overall average stats leaves Outlaw comfortably in the middle of B tier. Coming in in after Outlaw is the hulking monster truck we all know and love, Hammerhead. This appearance of Hammerhead is a solid one, given the reliable special weapon, high armor, and actually decent handling, at least better than what you would expect for a character of this class. The special weapon has Hammerhead home into an opponent much like Grasshopper, then Hammerhead throws itself at an opponent to crush them. The low speed can lead to some annoying situations where it can be tricky to catch up to fleeing opponents or maintain solid positioning, but it's all certainly doable. These factors all lead Hammerhead to being placed within the B tier. ROADKILL is up next, with his appearance in this game closely resembling his Twisted Metal 2 counterpart, though with some quality of life improvements. The biggest quality of life improvement is with his special weapon, the boomerang projectile, which shoots a projectile with boomerang-like qualities that inflicts double damage if it collides with an enemy while returning to ROADKILL. In this version of the character, reactivating the attack at any point will cause the projectile to come back to ROADKILL, instead of having a set travel distance before returning. This gives players more options and flexibility with how they use the special weapon, which I think is a really nice addition. Unfortunately, the boomerang projectile doesn't seem to curve as much as it did in Twisted Metal 2, which can sometimes make it a bit more difficult to land a return hit on opponents. All in all, ROADKILL is still a good character that takes some practice to get good with, but is one of the more rewarding characters once mastered. Warthog is next in the B tier and is, in my opinion, one of the most beginner-friendly characters to use. Warthog has great armor and an easy to use special weapon that fires out 3 homing missiles at opponents. This attack doesn't do the most impressive amount of damage, but its reliability and ease of use make up for that. I haven't mentioned this before, but Warthog is one of the characters in this game that doesn't have their special weapon completely nullified during boss fights, as it's always usable at any point throughout a playthrough, which is really nice. The biggest downsides to Warthog are the more sluggish speed and handling, making it more difficult to maneuver around enemies and traverse the map efficiently. All of these factors are what leave Warthog near the top of B tier. Continuing through the B tier, we have Shadow. Shadow, like many others, also functions similarly to previous iterations of the character. The special attack sends a shadow along the ground in a straight line, then upon reactivation of the attack, the shadow explodes, dealing damage to enemies within close proximity. This can be especially great when detonated near a group of enemies for some massive damage. What holds Shadow back, in my opinion, is not being great at any one particular thing, but instead just being good all around, which is why I find the B tier to be an appropriate placement. Capping off the B tier, we have Axel, who returns with his signature burst special attack. This attack functions really well in this game as it has pretty good range, does decent damage, and is fairly easy to land given the great controls of head-on. You can do really great damage safely against enemies with a quick shield command and a few uses of the special weapon. Axel just has a really straightforward gameplay style that is really effective and easy to execute, which is what brings him to the top of B tier. Starting off the A tier is the beloved filthy camper of the series, SPECTRE. Not much sets this iteration of SPECTRE apart from previous versions, as they all have basically the same special attack as well as practically the same exact strengths and weaknesses. High speed and an easy to use, long range, versatile special weapon, but very low armor to compensate. It works out better in this game than most others, mainly due to the AI being overall less aggressive, while also having a variety of larger maps to play on, which is definitely a benefit to SPECTRE. Up next is Mr. Slam in one of his strongest appearances throughout the series, in my opinion. In this game, his special attack will activate automatically upon coming within the required range of an opponent, and this special attack seriously disrupts and displaces enemies, making it very easy to follow up with additional attacks. Pairing this with a high armor stat makes Slam an incredibly formidable vehicle within the game, only really being held back by low speed and handling, which definitely does suck considering the special attack requires you to be practically touching the enemy for it to hit. Slam is also one of those characters that unfortunately has their special attack nullified during boss fights, which is pretty annoying. Still, Slam is highly effective in this game and worthy of the A tier placement. Up next and starting the top 5 is undoubtedly the most iconic character in the series, and that's none other than Sweet Tooth. His special weapon in this game is reminiscent of his special from the second game, where a pink, bouncing projectile with homing properties is sent at opponents. This attack is really easy to use, can be used at a range, and does good damage. On top of this, Sweet Tooth has a great armor stat, allowing him to survive for long periods of time without needing to retreat for health as often. Overall, Sweet Tooth is just great in this game, and always a great choice for a playthrough. Coming up next at the number 4 spot is the Maniac who chooses a motorcycle to use for a Twisted Metal competition, Mr. Grimm. There are no surprises with this character as he acts like he always does throughout the series. A glass cannon with a devastating special weapon that can delete enemies when deployed skillfully. The special attack acts much like a power missile, but with a short wind-up animation before the projectile actually fires, as well as doing increased damage. The obvious drawback of the character is the abysmal armor stat, but when the speed and agility are taken advantage of, this disadvantage can be mostly nullified. This leaves Grimm in a very favorable position on my list, near the top of A tier. Taking the number 3 spot on my list is Thumper. I really like how Thumper's special weapon has changed in this game. It still features fire being shot out from the front of the vehicle, but instead of being a short-range stream of flames, it instead shoots several fiery orbs that have the ability to hit enemies at a distance. It may not do as much damage as it does in Twisted Metal 2, but having the ability to hit enemies at a range and not having to be so precise really makes this an upgrade in my opinion. Thumper is just really easy to use and does a ton of damage, which is why I believe the A tier is a fitting placement. Cousin Eddie takes the number 2 spot in my rankings as the top vehicle within the A tier. Cousin Eddie's special attack is similar to Darkseid from Twisted Metal Black or Hammerhead from Twisted Metal 3. It propels the vehicle forward and increases ramming damage for the duration of the attack. The special actually lasts quite a while, letting you use it in advance to catch up to enemies and still have enough time to hit them with the extra damage. However, the main reason Eddie ranks this high is for the machine gun replacement he receives. Eddie's normal machine gun instead fires what are practically homing missiles at opponents, meaning you don't ever really need weapon pickups in order to output consistent damage onto enemies. The one downside Eddie has is the larger size of the vehicle, making you a large target, though I believe the strengths clearly outweigh the weaknesses and shoot Eddie all the way up to the top of A tier. The number 1 vehicle in this game is none other than Darktooth, to the surprise of nobody I'm sure. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with those stats. Darktooth is just an absolute menace of a character that, like Eddie, has an extremely powerful machine gun replacement. Darktooth's replacement has him practically shooting Sweet Tooth's special weapons instead of machine guns, which is just absurd. The special attack is basically just an empowered version of Slam's special, which is an already great attack to begin with. The only slight drawback of the character is the larger size, but besides that, this really is a character without many flaws whatsoever, which makes him an undeniable choice for the number 1 spot in Twisted Metal Head-On. And now for a full look at the list. Besides ATV, I don't think there really are any bad characters in this game, but there are certainly some that are better than others. Just to reiterate, I believe the characters within each tier have highly similar levels of effectiveness and could be interchanged depending on personal preferences. I'd also like to give you one more quick reminder about that community ranking survey I talked about at the beginning of the video. The link is in the description below if you want to participate. Thank you all so much as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.